Great. Another question from Mandy. Mandy was also former interim director of Indox. How did you decide the structure of the editing? Was everything told chronologically? If not, then how? And was it difficult getting release from the patients, or consent from the patients? And why is one of the director anonymous?
Okay, so I think the second question I just addressed. So going back to the structure, the first question, the structure of the film. For a while, we didn't know, even after we made the decision, we're gonna use the Wuhan story to tell a universal human COVID story. But for a long time, we still were not sure how long we will continue filming. Are we gonna continue filming the recovery of Wuhan and post the end of the lockdown? Sorry, I'm having some audio issue here on my end. I'm just gonna use my headphones, see if they help. Hi, can you hear me? Yeah. So, but then I just remember in early February, I online video. Somebody shot on with their cell phone and uploaded to social media. They uploaded, and then I watched it. It's about the 3-minute national mourning, and in the entire city of Wuhan just shut down with an air siren, and everybody was paying back to the dead. I just remember I was crying so much when I was watching that video, because I think there's a lot of very complex emotions, not just with what's happening in the world. Just I care about my family in China. I worry about them. My grandfather had just passed away. I wasn't able to go back to China to say goodbye, and the U.S. COVID response was a complete disaster. So I was crying and so much because on one hand I was so happy to see Wuhan emerge from the lockdown in relatively a short period of time, but also I was in pain knowing how much the city had sacrificed, how much trauma the people of Wuhan is still going through, just emotionally. So I just feel very strongly, I had an epiphany then that should be the ending of the film. That should be a nice ending to wrap up, to tell the story, rather than continue to film the city post-lockdown. So my film should be about the lockdown. So once that decision is reached, the end of the film, then naturally, we are not going to go back to do any investigation, because I mentioned earlier, it would be hard to do investigation about what happened in the very early, like in December 2019 or early January 2020. So the film will be naturally from the beginning of the lockdown to the end of the lockdown. So once that decision is made, so what we did was we're just going to be able to track the emotional journey of the city, of the population during the lockdown, from the early absolute chaos, panic, fear, to the gradual stabilization, but still there's a lot of ups and downs on the individual, for any individual patients, until at the very end, the city trying to move out of the lockdown, but can't, because there's still so much pain left over. So that's but even with that, for a long time we experimented, okay, so should we stay inside a hospital mostly, or should we go out, try to tell more stories about the city? Now, because if you think about the lockdown in Wuhan, you definitely are thinking about people, residents. You think about the volunteers. You think about restaurants trying to feed the city, or grocery store trying to sell, try to deliver groceries. But then the fact of the matter was, it was extremely difficult for anyone to film the city, because there's a very limited freedom of movement. To go anywhere within Wuhan, you need to have permission, explicit permit. And secondly, I've watched other short documentaries on Chinese streaming site about, because volunteers helping the city, somehow those stories are really moving, but also flat to some degree. It wasn't emotionally appealing to me personally. So even though we shot some volunteer stories and they were really sort of like really cute, it could be a nice diversion from the claustrophobic feel inside a hospital. But in the end, we just decided not to use it. So anytime we come out of the hospital, it's mostly for a breather, right? For people to take a break. But we centered our story inside a hospital because because once again the uniqueness of the footage we had shot, my collaborator has shot, and secondly, personally, I feel like whenever I'm editing a hospital scene, I get so emotional, and I feel like that way the audiences will be moved as well. So the other questions about why anonymous. So for a long time, because we didn't know where exactly where the film will be going, so Anonymous understandably was really worried because he works for a state-owned newspaper, and he's only worked for a state-owned newspaper in his entire professional career. He didn't want his career to be impacted in any way. He said, I know you're doing this. I can give you footage to make whatever you want. Because Anonymous is that, unlike Wei Chen, he doesn't aspire to become a documentary filmmaker. He said, I don't care about the credit. I support whatever you want to do. But at the same time, he's worried about what would the censors view this film, Chinese censor, how would they view this film? And more importantly, he was worried about backlash on Chinese internet because there are so many nationalistic internet trolls who would regard any slightly negative portrayal of the Chinese government as being attacking China or being unpatriotic. They will go after your personal attacks. He was really worried about both of these things, and actually more about the latter, because as we went into more post-production, I explained to him, I really want to highlight what's unique about the footage and tell the universal human stories. I don't want to tell the politics because there would be nothing new we could say. But he still was very worried. So we just said, okay, we'll respect your wishes, but at the same time, we really want to acknowledge your contribution. So we made him a co-director, but at the same time, anonymous. So even after work premiered at Toronto International Film Festival, we still haven't taken any Chinese language media interview because we want to limit the exposure to this film in China to primarily to protect them.